Hi, this is Alec from a Chatbots and AI meetup in New York, and I'm here with Peter Buch, who's very prolific in the chatbot space and has started a whole lot of different products within his area. So I'll let Peter introduce himself more and tell us about what he's doing.
Hey guys, my name is Peter. I'm the co-founder of Swell, and at Swell we want to help people decide. So that's our main product is Swelly, a chatbot that runs and sits on top of Facebook Messenger, Line, Viber, Kik, and Telegram. And the basic functionality is you post 2 photos and ask a friend for their opinion. Let's say I'm in a store and I want to know what to buy. I just take 2 photos and share and get instantaneous feedback. And yeah, other than that, we are a market research company. So meaning that we also built a SaaS tool for brands to leverage our audience and ask them questions and get detailed analytics on our backend tool that we created. So again, Swelly sits on Facebook Messenger, Line, Viber, Kik, and Telegram. And we learned the last couple months that we know how to grow on those platforms. And we are one of the bot developers out there that actually started monetizing really early on.
Yeah, so, and you had one more things, right? Heroes for the influencers themselves?
Yeah, exactly. So one of our biggest growth drivers right now is Heroes, which is influencer marketing. So we leverage influencers that are big on Instagram, YouTube, or other channels, and that already have an audience, let's say in beauty or fashion. And we basically help them to create an audience within our product, within the Swell community, so they can leverage that to create that content. For example, if they don't know what video they should put up next on YouTube, they simply use Swell and get immediate feedback from our audience, but also from their audience when they talk about it within a video. And to bring this whole Heroes thing one step further, we decided to create Heroes.ai as a Heroes bot platform, meaning the top heroes, our top influencers, will get their own bots to actually communicate with their fans even better and having a deeper, more meaningful conversation. And at the same time, we allow the fans to ask questions and get them really, really hard. If you imagine to get thousands of messages a day, you don't really have time to answer all that. And if you use the FAQ to automatically answer them, they still have the time to vote on A/B questions, right? So that's the basic idea: is simplify the process of asking a question and of answering the question for the hero.
Great. So, I mean, this is such a natural fit for something like fashion or kind of those influencers or like fitness travel. Do you one day see something like this happening for other influencers, like the networking hardware influencer is going to have a bot or someone like in kind of other maybe B2B and kind of different spaces?
So yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the whole concept of Swell as a community, as a network, is kind of becoming a core of the Snapchat generation, which means that it doesn't matter really what area you're in. You can use Swelly to engage your audience. At the same time, you can ask basically any questions and get it answered. But for now, we really focused on simple visual questions that are easy to answer for a hero or for somebody you want to ask the question. But of course, I mean, later on, that could be an option.
Okay. I mean, so you've written a lot about growth, and you've been very candid on Medium. And I remember a particular article you're spending a lot of time kind of traveling and at conferences and not as much as you liked on your product. And I think a month or 2 later, you like released product after product after product. So I mean, you had like a team behind you working, getting all that done, or how did that go?
So I think, first of all, yeah, I mean, yes, absolutely. I mean, I think I reflect a lot, and I always try to be transparent and post the things that I learned so others don't make the same mistakes. But for me, really, it's about, we created this one product that didn't work that well as an app, but then worked really, really well as a bot. And now, at the same time, we're not a bot company. So we wanted to create an experience where the user can reach us wherever he or she is. And that being said, we have a team. I have a team of engineers, of designers, of community builders. So we are 10 people, more than 10 people in total right now. But in terms of traveling, also I changed my approach here, becoming more, I'm a kind of a CEO/CPO. At the same time, I talk a lot to investors and speak on conferences. So for me, I took a certain amount of time every single week to focus on my role as a CPO to have more time for product. That's actually the main change that I did.
Okay. So, I mean, I think when bots first started getting like all the attention last year after the first F8, you could just write a bot and you'd get in TechCrunch and VentureBeat and you get a bunch of press. And I think it's a little different now. What would you say is advice to someone kind of starting a bot? Is it worthwhile actually building some sort of audience first before launching the bot, or just build the bot and like see what happens after? Like, how are things different now, and what would you recommend to people?
Yes, so the hype cycle into what happened at after F8 last year. We were not in that cycle, right? We launched a bot in August. We played with bots before, but we really didn't leverage this whole like first initial like moment, like boom moment within bots. So my advice here is, first of all, build a great product and build a simple product that everybody really understands immediately. And if I were to build a core for a Snapchat generation, which is kind of like my vision, my pitch, I could start with very complicated things, right? You can have so many open-ended questions. You can have video. You can have so many things that might distract from a very clear, simple way of beginning. That's what we did with this A/B question thing. So I think, first of all, like talk a lot to users, get feedback, and be close to users. That's all that matters at the beginning. In terms of platform, I think what bots do and why bots are so great is that it's so simple to build the first version of a bot. You can even use Chatfuel, a bot builder platform, to start as a first prototype and then like take it from there, right? It's just, there's no really a need to build an audience somewhere else, I believe. Okay.
So you think you should actually just release something first and then iterate versus trying to make it kind of super impactful and powerful, but not knowing if your audience actually needs it?
It really, I mean, for us, yes, definitely. For most that needs to be super sophisticated. Still talk a lot to your users, your clients, but don't really launch it until it's good, because you need, or it's great, right? Because you need the trust of this community, I think. If it's a cybersecurity thing, it has to be like way more sophisticated in terms of technology in the first place. So I would actually, yeah, I would launch something in the consumer space in a couple of days as a first version.
Couple days, wow, okay. So I mean, you started from just the kind of just the voting side of it, and now you've got, I think, like a few avenues for monetization, but you waited until you had a lot of activity. Is there any guideline that you could share on like how long do you wait before you start rolling out things to monetize your bot?
So again, that's a thing that really depends on what you do. I think we've seen a lot of social networks that just grew really, really big and then started monetizing. I mean, Snapchat is a really good example now. They still have to figure out how to actually make money, even though they're playing with that right now. And I mean, they have some revenue, but still they're far from being profitable, right? So my take on that, as an entrepreneur for like more than 10 years now, I just wanted to build a company that makes money and that actually has revenues. And for us, it's not really about monetizing as like growing the business side really, really big. It's more about the same as we did with the consumer. We try to get a lot of brands' feedback and build a great product for them. And I think market research is really obvious for us, right? As a way to collect hundreds of millions of opinions in a really, really short amount of time. There's so much data that can be used for research to build better products, because like brands have questions too. And we see every user, it doesn't matter if the user is on a Swell bot or it uses the Swell.biz site as a brand marketeer. They're all humans that have questions, and we want them to answer in the best and fastest possible way.
Okay, great. So I read that you had some kind of angel investment funding, and plus you had previous companies. Other people have gone kind of the VC route. Like, do you see it being possible to bootstrap and grow very large, like right now, today, not a year ago, with the chatbot?
So I think actually I think bootstrapping is still a really, really good thing, and especially in the bot space where it's so easy to create an initial first version of your product, you can go really far if you have a dedicated team that puts the time, efforts in. You can prove that your product works in a relatively short amount of time. If you were to build hardware or a more complex product, then, I mean, of course, at some point you just need some money in, right? For us, investors will give us money to grow, or they give us money to the monetization part, right? Either for user growth or for really growing the monetization when it's actually proven that it works. At that point, VCs will throw money at you. Before that, it's really hard to raise VC money. So yeah, bootstrapping is still the best way to do it. We did it for a long time when we started.
So you've kind of straddled the worlds of kind of business and consumer with your market research, and then things for like the voting and the influencers. So do you see what are differences you see between making a bot for consumers and making a bot or a service for businesses?
Okay, so the consumer space is really crowded, and it's actually hard to find something that hasn't been done yet to make something really impactful and meaningful. I think businesses and B2B has a lot of opportunities for things that are not that sexy, and where you can, if you really dig deeper and talk to corporations and ask them for their actual problems, then there's a lot of need out there for new products, especially in this new space. Thinking of like better consumer experiences for, like, let's say, talking to a brand, or for just, you know, solving internal problems in a company that couldn't have been done without the connectivity and open chat framework.
How do you feel things have changed since your August launch to today? I mean, what's sort of positive? What's maybe not as easy as it used to be in the chatbot space?
Okay, so generally about us, I mean, we grew from 3 founders to a team of 15 people, around 10 full-time. So that changes the dynamics of the team. We're in 2 time zones, sometimes even 3 time zones. Developers in Vienna, Austria, with a 9-hour time difference, to LA, where I'm based with my co-founders. So that's one thing that, of course, changes the whole dynamic. But we just try to be as fast as possible. And I think what changed is we have more opportunities because the platforms became better, right? Facebook's better than it was when they launched. I think also on Kik and Telegram, you just have more options. And so I think the main, we don't really look that much about like competitions about what others do. And I think that's one thing that we really learned, is just really focus on a good product. Of course, like get feedback from your customers and get feedback from the platforms to build a better experience on their platform. But I think, yeah, again, the main changes is there's more developers, but they also help educating the consumer. So it's a good situation right now.
Okay. So, I mean, one of the things that I know people have liked about Kik is how they can share bots with others and kind of use that for viral growth. And there's kind of all this talk on what's happening at F8, like group bots or things like that. What are your thoughts on kind of Messenger and what experience you're hoping comes out from Facebook?
So, I mean, of course, like that group functionality would be great, and opens another really potentially impactful way to discover bots and even to grow, right? But in terms of growth that you mentioned within Kik, I mean, again, built in something where people will love to share. And it doesn't matter if it's within us that you basically ask a question, and then Swell asks you if you want to share it with your friends, and you're most likely to do it because you leverage your friends' opinions. That's like just a natural way of growing as a social network. And even like, it's not really in bots, but what Dropbox did with inviting people to Dropbox as your friends, and you would get credits, right? Some sort of things. I've seen mostly like nothing like that, or almost nothing like that within the bot space. And I think if your growth works, like if your intrinsic morality, you can go really far.
So the way you build your kind of like social network on a social network, is it going across? So like if you're a Swell user and you're on Kick and you're a Swell user on Facebook Messenger, can you kind of work together, or like are you part of like the same one group, or how does that work across platforms?
Yes, of course. Like it's all connected. So within Kick, and people within Messenger can answer. So can people in Telegram. So it's really about wherever you are, you share a question. Wherever the other person is to answer, it can be a part of the community, or it can be a friend. Whatever messenger they have, they get a notification if they're your friends, or they just see your question within the feed if you post something in fashion or in tech, for example.
Okay. So what are your thoughts on kind of the whole, we have bots that are pure text, we have bots that have buttons and quick replies, and then we have kind of the web view mini app style bots, whether it's Facebook or all the way to kind of what WeChat does. Where do you feel is like the appropriate guideline for when you kind of do each of those?
So first of all, I think that you are either an AI company and focus on creating some sophisticated AI that doesn't exist right now, and as far as I've seen it. And I think you either do a smart solution for the user where he actually feels that somebody's really talking and having a good conversation flow and a smart bot, or you use buttons and see it as we do, as a more of a web browser and just a new channel to acquire users, right? For us, what Messenger and all those platforms primarily are is again like kind of a browser.
Okay.
So that being said, again, depending on use case, we are picture-based, so it makes a lot of sense to leverage web views, to follow people, to view their profiles. But I've seen other great bots like Neargroup, for example. They purely text, and it's just about communication. That works as well. But then there's not really the AI component. It's really connecting and matching people then that they can actually talk to each other after the initial conversation initial start of the conversation that Neargroup did for you. So it's kind of a speed dating bot. It works really well.
That's interesting. I kind of see your bot as a connector for people versus the bot itself being the focus, where a lot of people that have NLP bots, like the bot is the focus. You're talking to the bot and trying to get something from the bot. Where it sounds like what you're doing is the bot is a way to get you in touch with your friends, or get information from others, not so much the bot itself, like having an active conversation with you.
Exactly, but also like really meeting new people, right? So it's not about dating or something. It's really about like following interesting people who help you with sharing opinions, and they might eventually ask you a question and you might answer, and vice versa. So it's really about, at Facebook is really good at connecting people that you already know, and they're also really good at introducing you to mutual friends. So like to people who you are like second hand connected, so to say. But for Swell, it's really, it goes one step further. It connects you to people that share similar interests and are in a similar category. Again, let's say in fashion or in tech.
Okay. So I think there's kind of different kinds of metrics that people look at as far as like what's the success of the bot, and it kind of depends a bit on the use case. But I mean, what other than just active users, like is there anything that you think is vital that people track and actually base decisions on?
So I think the hard part with tracking active users is the question, what is an active user? Is an active user when you get a broadcast message, a push message from a bot, and you open the chat window? Is that an active user? I think most bots that send news and or the weather, that actually track those things as an active user, right? Because you get a notification and you kind of open the chat. But it can also mean that you're not really interested and you just open it because you're annoyed by the notification. Mm-hmm. We track like the main metrics that we track is the total votes. So we want people to share opinions. We want people to ask questions and get really fast answers. So we have two metrics that we track. The first is, again, the total votes that we collect, which we we passed more than 100 million so far, and then you get the first responses when you ask a question. So I think every business is different, and every bot and every app is different. So you really need to find your one KPI that you track, and then you might have a second and a third that are also indicators for you being a successful product or startup. But for us, really, it's those two things.
I think that was great because there's certain metrics where you can kind of run the metric into the ground and not actually solve your business problem. So I like that you don't just look at something generic like active users. You look at something that implies getting value from your product, and for you, that's the votes.
So yeah, and of course, like also created questions. I mean, but then again, it kind of it's created questions and answered questions is kind of the same thing, right? So more created swells lead to more votes, and so kind of
So this is kind of off the wall a bit, but so Twitter kind of started off and got so much traction and so many people on it, and then it's people aren't sure what's going on with it. Could you ever see like a resurgence of Twitter, like if they made it more interactive? Let's say you do votes on a poll in Twitter and they got a better experience for that. Like, do you think that might bring like just regular day-to-day people back engaging on the platform, and would that be something you'd go on?
So I don't know. Like I was never really a big fan of Twitter. I used it a little bit, but not too much. So I think, of course, I mean, Twitter has to kind of reinvent themselves, but they haven't been very good at this so far. And I think, you know, Twitter bots is another completely different scenario that is interesting for developers to grow an audience there and to also make the Twitter experience better. I think they do like kind of Twitter polling, so it's kind of a thing where you can ask a question and has set answers, kind of like multiple choice. But I think the whole Twitter as a brand and as a product is just not so much for millennials, right? So it's really hard to get them. I think what Yik Yak did is great. Like they failed as well, but their approach was really, really interesting. As a kind of like college location-based Twitter version that is secret and anonymous, which has its downsides too. But I think that's, you know, like, I don't know, I would change a lot if I would be in charge at Twitter.
So I mean, how do you see kind of the more millennial social networks being different? Like, what makes someone more engaged with their Snapchat or Instagram, even if they're still following like a bunch of celebrities and people, versus Twitter, where they could do something similar to that, experience a little different, but they could do that there. But why do you think they're not?
I think they tried. I mean, they did. They with the acquisition of Periscope, for example, and they wanted to push live video, right? And I think that would be a good thing. But I think they were a little slow in execution on that. At the same time, Facebook is just killing it on that, right? So Facebook is just really great in building innovative products themselves, but also copying things that they like and they see it and they basically, you know, make it even a better experience. And I think Facebook Live video is just better than what we've seen with Periscope and Meerkat and all those things.
What are your thoughts on kind of Facebook's menus and the ability to kind of turn off free text altogether? Is that a positive thing, or is that a negative thing?
I think stupid bots shouldn't use open text, and smart bots should leverage the text. And we're not we didn't build the smartest bot out there. We focus on creating the app experience within the bot. So it's really, I think the term bot can be so misleading because there's some bots that are AI, there's some bots that are actually apps, there's some bots that are more about, you know, like open questions, but then still with buttons to answer. So I think it's really about the education of the user, and then depends on the use case. So I'm a strong believer of those like light-weighted apps within the chat ecosystem.
Okay.
It's like, again, like why would I download an app that does one specific thing for me once a month?
Mm-hmm.
No need.
So you think kind of bots need to offer very like common engagement, or even like just something that you use not too often. It's probably going to get forgotten.
Yeah, and the thing is with bots that get forgotten, or if there's like one-time use case in a week or in a month, that you don't really have that kind of discovery. So bots and the platforms need to be smart about how to actually discover bots when they're needed. Because when I need an app, I download it and I know it takes time and I cannot really do something really quick. But that's where bots can be way better. If I want to order pizza now, I need to find a way to order the pizza now, and I don't really want to think about it. When I write it, I want to have my pizza in like 45 minutes, or my Uber. So I think, yeah, that's a big opportunity. That's one of the big opportunities for bots. Another one would be like influencers, right? Talking to influencers that could never really answer all your questions, but now they can, because they have kind of an automatic reply, and also get smarter and can even set a time aside for you to actually connect with them in person, or customer service, where it doesn't necessarily need to be that smart either, because most questions that consumers have to a business are always the same, and repeated questions are easy to build as a bot.
So jumping back to the influencers, as far as like the market research side of that, if people have questions, are you seeing interest more specifically from consumer brands, or are you also seeing kind of more business side interest on getting some market research?
So we started and talked to like random brands and startups and big corporations and whoever, but now we really figured out that we need to give the user a good content in the first place. So it doesn't really matter which brands want to work with us. It really matters what the users want. So we select brands based on that, meaning now we're focusing on the niches that we are best at, which is beauty, fashion, travel, and food. And brands in that space that are a good fit for our target audience, we work with them and we start building it from there.
Okay. So I also saw you kind of posting like your Y Combinator application, and I think a lot of people were surprised that you applied again, given the growth of Swell and all the attention you have already. I mean, what do you see as a benefit of being part of an accelerator at like this stage in a company?
So, I mean, I think for us, it's really, first of all, the network effect in the US. We moved here a year ago, and we still could leverage that. Secondly, is you never really have access to such a big amount and like broad variety of smart people that you would have with a Y Combinator or with a Techstars, with a 500 startups, etc. So I think it's, it really depends on, it doesn't not necessarily just depend on the stage of your company, but also on kind of like your current needs and how they could actually help you individually. And I think YC would still add a lot of value to us, to our future.
So kind of jumping off that a bit, do you think it's helpful for someone who's kind of doing an early stage company, whether in the bot space or otherwise, to have some sort of mastermind group or mentors? Like I hear kind of that being talked about. I'm just curious if that's something that you've tried and if you found it useful.
Of course, I mean, yes, absolutely. I always try to surround myself with people that are smarter than myself, that are good in a certain area. I speak a lot to entrepreneurs who've done things that I would like to achieve, to investors who made money out of what they did, just to smart people that can actually be helpful. And I think getting together and learn from each other is really, really impactful for your business and also your personal life.
Okay. Do you think someone could just start a chatbot company today and get funded, or did it need some sort of like chatbot plus, like a chatbot plus some AI story or some like particular niche? Like, can you just be can you be Poncho today? Where I think they started off being just fun weather, and they actually moved into really interesting things, but they already had kind of some funding before they got to the interesting things.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on the users and how the users adopt your first product. Even if you have like 1,000 users and they're super active, then you have something. And if you can prove that 10,000 users like it as well, and it's not just your friends that use it on a daily basis, you can get funded with a simple bot startup, of course. But I would really, build what you'd like to build and build something people like. That's it's that easy, actually. It's very hard in execution, but in theory, it's pretty easy.
Okay, so what are some of the things you do? I mean, do you do A/B testing like heavily? I mean, for the core of the product where it's the voting, I imagine you have a team of 15 people now. Like there must be a lot going on behind the scenes. So yeah. How do you keep busy?
So how do we keep busy? I mean, we talk a lot to our users still. We have focus groups where we meet with users that left the platforms. We meet with users that are really engaged. We constantly play with new potential features that we either build or don't. We test them in the first place. We're growing as a bot company that also builds apps for iOS and Android. So we always have to reinvent ourselves, right? It's really, really fast moving. And nobody knows if we still build A/B voting in a year, right? So it's really, you have to be open and fast and listen to what your users want.
Okay.
And I keep being busy by doing interviews.
Yeah. Nice. So I'll pause a little bit. We've got a few people on, so I wanted to see if we had some questions from the audience. I think if everyone unmutes, it'll get noisy. So maybe just type out some questions if you've got them, and we'll jump into the questions section as well. So Pete, I mean, is there anything as far as advice or kind of things you'd want to share with the bot community about your journey that we kind of haven't covered or something like that?
I mean, we kind of like one quick thing is like we moved here. We had a name, like a different product name, and we just figured out that the product itself is really good and people like it, but the name just doesn't work that well, and we just changed it. It took us a month to rebrand and relaunch, and I think you just have to make such decisions really, really quickly, because you think like you kind of fall in love with your own company name or with your brand or with what you actually do. But if people don't like it, change it.
Okay.
So any questions here?
I don't see questions. So, oh, here we go. This is from Joe. Hey, Joe. What's the typical growth you see of the bot content once launched? Like, is there any sort of guideline for what works, what doesn't, or some threshold maybe?
I'm not sure if I understand correctly. Like bot content, what?
I think just like the bot itself, like.
Okay.
Like,
I mean, okay. So
when do you decide a bot is successful? I guess is the question.
It's not about the number of users. It's never about the number of users. It's only about engagement. The content your bot is supplying to your consumer. Okay, got it. So I think it really depends on the reaction to that and what your bot is about. If your bot is about asking a question and getting an answer, it's about how many people actually answer the question, right? Then that means the content is good. But in terms of like what bot works or not, I think it relatively quickly. If you get in the hands of 100 users and nobody likes it, you kind of it might be a little thing that they just don't like, and you iterate from there. We do a lot of iterations and change our product constantly.
How do you get in touch with those people? Let's say that they stopped using your bot. Do you send them a human message right from that channel and say, hey, this is Pete. I was curious why you stopped coming, or however you want to phrase it. Like, how do you get in touch with those people that left?
So many different things. So we have within the app, we have a functionality that we can send a message to our users. We use Intercom for that. We built our own messaging tool to reach out to our bot users. We have we do manual things where we reach out to some specific users one-on-ones. We have 2 people that do this a lot. And then we have like standardized messages that just work for feedback loops where we just ask them, hey, what happened? Why don't you use Swell anymore? Would you mind giving us some feedback? And some people answer. And I think the earlier you are, the more important it is to actually start this conversation as a one-on-one conversation, human to human. And the further along you are, the more you can automate and basically profile the users and ask specific questions to specific user personas.
How much does it matter your demographics? If you have like, I mean, Facebook, you're not supposed to be on Facebook unless you're 13, but I mean, if you ask a bunch of 14-year-olds why they use or don't use your bot versus like older people, like do you kind of target who you ask, or can you even figure that out somehow?
Of course, yeah. We target, so we know a lot about our users, and especially in terms of age and gender, it's really relevant, and also the interests they have. Because like a teenager in the fashion category that uses Facebook Messenger might be completely different to a teenager that is as well in the fashion space but uses Kik. Even that can be a difference. So yeah, we just experiment. It's kind of like a long experiment that you constantly try and get answers, right? Sometimes you speak to 100 users and you get one to say something that you really kind of have to do, and sometimes you talk and everybody's saying the same thing, and you have a really good solid base of actually changing that.
Mm-hmm.
It really depends.
So I mean, I imagine it must have been pretty important given you moved to California, but I mean, what are kind of the benefits of being in that area within shooting distance of Silicon Valley, or maybe even in New York or something like that, given you can start a company anywhere?
So for us, it was really, we started in Austria, we got some funding, we knew that the market in Europe is nice and big, but the US is bigger, and we got initial funding, so we decided to move. We checked New York, San Francisco, and LA for a while, and really figured out that for us as a consumer product, as a media/tech company, this whole thing that they call Silicon Beach is really good fit. You have Snapchat, Tinder, BuzzFeed here for a reason, right? You have Disney and all the big media companies here. So you can meet influencers on a daily basis. You have a great weather, so people are open and friendly, and it's a good environment for a consumer product to grow. It's a little less expensive than San Francisco or New York as well, and you can still attract really good talent here. It's not, you don't really compete with the big Silicon Valley companies yet. I mean, you still do, but it's not as hard and as tough as if you were to be in San Francisco or like Palo Alto, for example.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Do we have any questions from the audience? Okay, we got a question from Brittany. As your bot is in the market researching field, do you envision the bot helping with advertising in the future? That's a great question.
Helping with advertising? You mean like making better ads? I just answered that question as I understand it. In terms of better ads, yes, and targeted. So of course, I mean, we already do targeting within the B2B product. You can check swell.biz and sign up for a free account and send me a message if you have any further questions. My email is, I'll type it real quick. It's just pete@swell.biz. We do the targeting, and right now some brands ask questions like which ad would work better for you guys, or which image do you prefer? I mean, it's even a user thing, right? Which photo should I post on Instagram? And people just post 2 photos and share and get answers. What Swell Biz as a research tool does, and compared to Swell, it gives you the ability to target as a brand, but also to get the data afterwards. So you can check the demographic and geographic data, and we're working on a lot of more detailed targeting things here.
So at this point, you're looking at being able to maybe test out, add pictures or copy or things like that, but not actually send an ad directly to people.
No, we wouldn't really do that. It's all about decision making and helping people decide. So if a brand asks a question and people answer, it's great. There might be an option for selected brands to even post kind of a link after this. Could be to a blog post, could be to a YouTube video, could be to an actual product to purchase. But it really depends on the brand. If the brand is a good fit, that's a thing that we do with selected brands for now.
Okay. So Joe asked, so what's been your biggest challenge in the bot space?
Today or in general? A lot of challenges all the time. And I think it's really, biggest challenge was actually figuring out what we started, and we took an app and wanted to create a growth channel for our app. And that's why we started Swell initially, but it didn't work at all. So people just wouldn't convert to app users in the first place, but they liked the A/B voting and they enjoyed the interaction with the bot. So the bot was just a way simpler and easier way to interact between the users. So no need to download an app, better use case. So that was one of the first key learnings. The second thing is, of course, bot retention is still an issue. You lose a lot of users in the first couple of days when they don't really understand what you're doing. So we're playing a lot with the onboarding to actually educate the user, because a user that goes to your bot in Messenger right now, they don't necessarily even know first that they're talking to a bot. Second, they don't really know what's it about, because there's not really a good discovery out there yet. It's not an app store where you can read and watch a video and those kind of things. If you look at Swell on Facebook Messenger, we built a pretty good and solid onboarding where the Swell would guide you through the process. And that's still a challenge. That's a thing that we work on a daily basis to improve the user's onboarding experience.
Do you find that people are still getting confused with what to do with the bot once they get there?
Some people still do, yeah. Of course, people are lazy and don't really like to read. So we try to make this even more visual and thinking of other things. And again, there's going to be some things that are happening tomorrow that I cannot talk about. So you should all watch F8. But yeah, there's a lot of yeah, it's hard actually to educate a user in the first place, because again, most people are confused by the term bots. And great question, by the way, constant struggle, challenges all the time.
Mm-hmm. Any more questions? I had something on my mind and then I lost it, but maybe I'll think of it in the next 30 seconds.
Right. Anybody here watching this going to F8? No?
Oh, Joe's just getting started with bots.
Sounds good.
So I guess I kind of last thoughts on the bot space. I mean, with F8 tomorrow, it's probably an exciting time. I mean, how do you feel about the industry as a whole?
So, hi there, I see you at F8. One person replied. And so I think the whole space is just getting started. Facebook is heavily invested in this. That's what David Marcus just recently said. And I think, it was faster than with apps to start developing things on Messenger. So it was faster to actually have make bots available. But I think, we're just getting started. It's harder to educate the user in this space, because they're used to talk to people and to their friends within chat, and now there's robots or apps or games or whatever out there. So it will take some time, but we're still waiting for the killer use cases. And I think we're doing pretty well. There's others that are doing pretty well, like Poncho Near Group and Epithom as a personal stylist bot. That's really cool. But at the more good use cases that are out there, so the more good developers start building bots on Messenger and other platforms, the easier and faster the whole thing will grow.
Got a question. Any thoughts on bots in the enterprise world?
A lot of thoughts. So I think enterprise is a huge opportunity, and there's so many problems that can be solved better with conversational design, like conversation. I mean, we're even like playing with the Slack platform right now, thinking of creating an experience for Swell Biz within Slack, where you can, as a marketer, you can create your own A/B questions directly within Slack and get the target data, that like geographic and demographic data, back to Slack. So that's a really cool use case. I think, yeah, enterprise is big. Just takes a little more time because you have to do, you have a sales funnel, or you just figure out a way that can actually get kind of viral or get featured in platforms like Slack. But yeah, definitely, enterprise is a great space and great opportunities.
What are your thoughts on kind of voice, and given you have like a very visual product?
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe, I think people are talking one day about a screen for Alexa. I don't know how real that is. But supposing somehow they did get integrated voice and screen, like, do you see that being a challenge to like the whole text bot idea in the first place, or what are your thoughts on voice?
Another really great thing for specific use cases, right? If I want to know about the weather now, I might as well ask Alexa.
I think you just ask everyone's Alexa on the call.
Yeah. Okay, Google. I got it. So I think actually it's really early for voice, but it's a big opportunity, and we are playing with that. We're playing with both Google Home and Alexa and Amazon Echo, and I think actually Alexa is way better for now. And also, I don't really understand why it's okay Google. It's a little weird, but I think we're getting there. I think a good step would be actually understanding who's talking, because if I go to a room and I want my music to play, and I don't want to say, okay Google, please open Spotify. Now please play the Beatles. I want to say, I'd like to hear the Beatles, and it recognizes my voice, and it recognizes that the Beatles is music, and and I have Spotify. So it needs to be that smart to make a good use case.
Yeah, I mean, I think that better context and parsing would be great.
Yeah,
I think even understanding like different people in the house, like maybe you like the Beatles, but your friend or other people may not. So
totally.
that would be interesting.
So like play my playlist, and
Right.
voice recognition.
Yeah, and it knows who you are and all of that.
That's one challenge. If anybody can solve that, please. So there's a security issue, right, and a privacy issue. If Echo or Google Home is permanently listening to what you say, it's easier to understand and recognize your voice without actually saying, hey, Alexa, or saying, okay, Google. At the same time, it's kind of weird to have Google recording or Google listening to everything you say. So I think that's a big opportunity. If somebody can solve that, that's huge.
Last thing, we'll get more questions if anyone has them, but I remembered, is there a point in time where, let's say you ask someone to vote, if they don't vote within like X amount of minutes, they're kind of very unlikely to actually vote or engage? Like, is there some sort of like heuristic or kind of number you've come up with where if you didn't bother by now, it's probably like not going to happen?
So it's really, I mean, of course there's a way to measure that, and we'll look into that. That's a good, interesting thought. But the thing is, when you get a question by Swelly, you have this one question, and then you have the next and the next and the next, right? So it's kind of when you miss it and you don't really vote in the first couple minutes, unless you really just have one friend or a couple of friends, you just miss that, and others answer. It's no problem. And you can still always go back to the feed and start voting again, and the question will show up again. But I think it's just really crucial that within the first couple seconds you have some answers, and if you're not the one to answer, then somebody else, and you have to see the next question. Unless it's friends, of course, it stays longer then.
So when you ask a question, you had mentioned that you can have a network with your friends or people sharing interests. What sort of determines like who gets asked this question?
Yeah, it depends on what you want. So you can ask just your friends. You can share it privately with a group of friends. You can ask the question to only the fashion category, so only people who are interested in fashion will answer, or you can just ask it to anybody in the Swell community, and that gets potentially a lot of reach if the question and content is good.
Do you think we'll get to a point where like you'll get a question asker who becomes famous, like instead of just like the influencers or the other people, like someone will ask really good questions?
Yeah, I totally think so, and it's happening already. There's people who have thousands of followers and ask questions daily, and they just really push good content and animate people to vote. And like this AB thing leverages like a lot of potential things. Like there's a girl that just asks "Would you rather" questions, and gets a big following there, right? It's pretty interesting. So I think we'll see. We'll find the next Swell heroes within the platforms.
Very cool. Okay, I think that's about it. We don't see any more questions. So thanks so much for taking the time with us. And we'll have this going on YouTube as soon as this finishes processing from Hangouts.
Awesome. Okay, guys, have a
Thank you.
swell day. Thanks for having me. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.